Good evening, REI Pro family. My name is Bo Manor, and I'd like to welcome you again to tonight's live Q&A session with myself and my business partner, Chris Goff. Say hi, Chris.
I had to actually unmute myself there, so you kinda caught me off guard, but,
You weren't
hey,
ready?
what's going on? Oh, man, I'm super excited about tonight. Got a ton of great questions, that came in, so, we got some other exciting stuff to share with you guys too tonight, so, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, so right off the bat, talking about that exciting stuff to share this evening. Earlier today, we released an update to the software that now you can actually purchase contact info credits, is what we're calling it. So these credits can be used in step two, where you used to purchase these what we call skip trace reports. We're calling them contact info reports now. It's more than just skip tracing. So we're going to call it contact info reports. You can now use these credits, and as most of you know, you were paying $1 per report. And now by being able to bundle these together and buy package plans, you can really get your cost way down. You can get that down to like 40 cents instead of paying that dollar. So I thought I'd just start out before we get into the Q&A session and show you guys kind of how that's going to work. I'm going to switch screens real quick, share something new. And here I am inside of the REI Pro software. And there's a couple of places that I'm going to show you how you can purchase these credits and use these credits. So I'll just start out with the familiar part where when you're in a property, and I'll just pull up any random property here. And when you're in step two of the property, that's where we look up these phone credits or these reports, these contact info. Here it is right here. And what you're going to notice instead of just purchasing the report, you're going to notice this credits remaining, and you'll have a number generally there. If you're on a standard plus or a team plan, you're going to be issued 100 credits at the beginning of every month, just like you got 50 free reports. These reports cost 2 credits each, so you'll be issued 100 credits at the beginning of the month. And if you need to purchase more credits, you can purchase it here. Now, if you don't have 2 credits, this report will not let it run. You'll have to click on purchase more credits. And when you do that, it'll pop up and what bundle do you want? Now you could purchase just 2 credits. That is our minimum. You could purchase 2 credits for $1. It's the same thing you're used to. You just kind of click on I agree, choose your payment method, and hit make payment. Now you can also purchase 25 credits for $10, 80 credits for 25, 200 credits for 50, or you can get a whopping 500 credits for $100. And any of these credits, they do not expire. So if you purchase them, you will have them in your account until you use them and need to recharge it up. So once you have the credits, then all you have to do is click Get Report, and it's going to say, in this case, it's warning you here that a previous report has already ran. You can see it down there below. Don't want you to waste any credits, okay? But normally this wouldn't come up if you haven't ran a report. I'm just going to say yes to show you what it does. So it's going to come up and say credits needed 2. You got credits remaining 86. It's just a confirmation to make sure, yes, I do want to use those 2 credits for this report. Another thing that we added to this screen that you couldn't do before is a print button. So once this report's been ran, if you want to print this information out, you can print it exactly what you see from the name here all the way down to the address history. If you want a full report of everything, you can, the show and hide tags that we have here, expand whatever you want to expand. And then all you have to do is click the print report button. And then it's going to open up where do you want to print it to, PDF, a printer that you have, and so on. Now it does open up this other tab because I want to isolate only the report itself. I didn't want to print the entire screen with all this other stuff. So when you hit print report, it just opens up just the report details and then asks what printer you want to print it to. So that's, it's real easy just to purchase credits right from this screen and do get report just like you're used to doing. Now I do want to show you up here under your account home section, you now have this new tab called Contact Info Credits. So if we go there, you will notice that on 6/1, which is June 1st, at the beginning of every month, the system is going to issue free credits to whoever is on a package plan that gets free credits. So you can tell here these were free. There's no order ID associated. It wasn't a purchased report. I got issued 100 credits. I still have 86 remaining. Now, if we issue free credits, we issue 100 credits at the beginning of every month. Those credits do expire at the end of the month. It's not if you don't use them, you lose them. They don't roll forward and just accumulate credits after credits after credit. So you do lose them, but you get a new 100 every single month. And then we went ahead and added, a view usage. If you click view usage, you can actually see which reports were ran, how many credits were used, and then from here you can click on the view report and see the report right there from the account home section area as well. So that's the two different places to be able to buy these. And we want to call this basically phase one. Okay, so phase one is being able to buy these in bulk, getting your cost a lot cheaper. And this is setting us up for what's coming here in the very near future that a lot of you guys have been asking for. And that's going to be by bulk skip tracing. So in the near future, just giving you a sneak peek. This is where it says direct mail. That's going to probably be changed to marketing. And when you go to direct mail, you'll have a section here for direct mail. Might look a little bit different. And then there'll be another section below, very similar to these campaigns, where we'll have a section for skip tracing and or contact information. Buy these bulk skip trace credits and use all these credits throughout the system to get these contact pins, if you will. And the credits over there are going to be one credit because it's going to be just contact information like cell phone, landlines, and emails, not all the extra stuff that the full report has. So it's going to be only one credit there, where the full blown out report is 2 credits. So that's some exciting stuff that's coming, dealing with that tonight. That went live today for you guys. Now, for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, let me just say welcome. We're going to have an awesome night tonight. And generally what we do is we spend the first part of the evening here. We're going to be answering all the questions that were sent in over the week. That's the first thing we want to do, because you took the time to ask the questions. We want to take the time to answer those questions. So for those of you that don't know how to ask a question, maybe you're new, once you log into REI Pro on the dashboard, you'll see this purple banner. All you have to do is click on this live Q&A webinar. It'll take you to this page here, and where it says connection instructions right now, this will be a section where you can fill out your name, a subject, and type your question in. 24 hours beforehand, it switches to the connection details. That's why I don't see it here, how to do it. But this is where you'll go to ask the question. Simply just click on that little banner there at the top. Now, time permitting, after we answer all the questions that were sent in for the week, we're going to try to answer some live questions. We do this every week, and we have a really good time when people start asking these live Q&A. So if you have a question already, maybe you didn't get a chance to ask it during the week, now will be a good time to go ahead and pop open the Q&A panel, type in your question there, and if you think of something throughout the evening, just go ahead and type it in so that when we get to the end and we have time, we will go ahead and answer those live questions. So I believe that's all the homework stuff. Chris, you got anything you want to say before we start?
No, just to clarify, when you say you get free credits, the Plus plan and the Team plan do come with some free credits, but the standard single plan does not. And that's the advantage of getting in the Plus plan, is having those additional credits as well. So, and they don't expire. So, and if you're in one of those plans, those credits are going to get used first. And then your purchase credits would then be thereafter. Is that correct, Bo?
Yeah, because I see somebody already asking, Jim's already asking that question about when you have credits monthly versus ones you bought separately, what happens? We're going to use up the free credits first. So even if you have purchase credits, say from last month, that have not expired, and then it rolls over to the beginning of the next month, where you're going to get issued another 100 free credits. So then we're going to go ahead and use up those 100 free ones first. If you deplete all your 100, then it'll tap into any of the remaining credits you've purchased from previous months until those are depleted. So
is that Jim Shoemaker?
That is Jim Shoemaker asking that. Yeah.
What is up, Mr. Jim Shoemaker?
Good.
Glad you're here. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Let's do it. All right.
So here we go. First question, which I believe is not really a question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, or read it out here from Alfred. He just says, hello, Bo and Chris. I don't have a question yet. Now, Alfred, I don't believe that at all, because you have lots of questions. But he says, I don't have a question yet, but I'm sure I will. I just wanted to compliment you on the REI Pro system. I've tried about 3 or 4 other systems, and yours, in my opinion, is an all-around for the money is the best. It's simple, straightforward, educational, and the fact that you two do the Q&A every week when you don't have to is just simply great. Thanks. You'll be seeing more of my questions here in a few. Well, Alfred, thanks for joining in the Q&A. You know, this is what it's all about. It's all about this REI Pro family. It's about connecting. It's about education. And we're just really excited to be able to connect with you guys and bring these really pressing questions you have because, you know, without getting the answers to it, sometimes you're just lost.
Yeah, we'll pay your $100 tomorrow, Alfred. Thank you for that. I'm just kidding.
All right, so here we go. Let's see. Next question comes from Todd. Will we at some point be able to filter out MLS listings so that we don't contact these people? Thanks. Well, Todd, number one, we don't get the MLS listings. We do get MLS sales data. Anytime a property sells across the US, we're fed into that a couple of times a day. But as far as which are the active listings on the MLS or the expired listings, those type of things, we don't get that. So we really don't have a way to filter out any type of MLS lead, if you will, from a lead pro, if that's what you're referring to. We don't have that information, so we wouldn't be able to filter that out for you. And right now, I don't know of any plans to bring in those MLS expired or the MLS listings right this minute either. Next question from Bobby. Now, this is from Bigger Pockets. Is this something that we should worry about? Since the SAFE Act and the Dodd-Frank legislation were passed, there's been some legal concern on the part of many investors that portions of rent applied toward the tenant's future down payment constitutes a quote security, which means many additional rules and regulations must be followed, ones you don't deal with or ones you don't want to deal with. Additionally, most banks will not allow this credit anyway. So it's just best to make the rent the rent.
I mean, this is a really good question because I think a lot of people get confused, and everybody always it's Bigger Pockets to me is very political. It's like I always said, if you actually were working the business full time, you wouldn't have time to go post something on Bigger Pockets, number one. But everyone's always got an opinion about something. You are correct. I don't use, and Bo knows this, using rent credits, number one. But I think where I want people to understand this is that those rent credits are not applied to a down payment, number one. If that were the case, then you're running into some issues. We had another good question. I think it was last week, Bo, with using credits and so forth towards a down
Mm-hmm.
payment. How could we reword that and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I kind of stay away from credits. But if I were to now, if I do the deal with the seller, I'll get credits all day long. I'm just not going to pass them on to the new buyer. Okay, so the last house I did a lease option on, I was getting $500 a month credits, but I wouldn't ever pass that on to someone else because it does create some red flags and some issues. But keep in mind, those credits that I would get would be applied to the purchase price, not the down payment. That's where you're going to run into some issues. So,
All right. Question from David. When I sign an option contract with the seller, but I am unable to find a qualified buyer slash renter, is there an exit option in the contract, or do I have to come up with the option payment and the monthly rent?
well, number one, we always have this clause in all of our agreements, no matter if it's a purchase agreement or if it's a lease option agreement. Anytime I get an agreement with the seller, I always, to a point, want to be careful because I want to make sure that if my intent is to find somebody else for the property, that if I can't find somebody, I would be legally allowed to just back out of the agreement. So, um, Bo, if you want, you can just pull a contract to purchase up real quick, and I'll show you these clauses that we talk about. We already have them in the actual agreement for you already. And again, you could take them out and you could change it up. Go to the contracts. There you go.
And I clicked the wrong one. All
Well, you got to make an offer before you get the deal,
right.
right? So,
Yeah, I'm used to doing that, right?
but and you'll see this as well in the lease option agreement. But this is just a quick, easy way to do it. You may have to change the
Yeah,
screen there, Bo. But I want to show people where this is and what we're talking about, because it has been a clause that I have been using pretty much from day one. and it's that subject to review, inspection, and written approval of my financial partner. So anytime I'm wholesaling a property, this is the contract I'm going to use. That's the clause. If I'm retailing a property, this is the contract. This is the clause. If I'm lease optioning a property, this is the clause. And we do have that in that specific agreement. If I'm seller financing it with the intent to do something else with it, I'll as well put that in there too. So you always want to have, I hate the term escape clause because that's kind of, I don't know, that just doesn't sound right to me. Um, but anyways, that's the clause that you would want to use right there.
Okay, switch my screen back. Next question coming from David. I like the fact that the buyer renter is responsible for repairs. Put $500 per occurrence. However, what if the larger repairs are needed, like an HVAC?
Yeah, so keep in mind with a lease option, the seller still owns the house, and keep this in mind. If they just rented the house, the seller would be responsible for all the maintenance costs and repairs. So we always put in 500. Again, you can always change that. And actually, I haven't told anybody, but I just released episode number 5 of lease options, which we talk about contracts. I actually go through the entire contract. Um, and we talk about this very specific question. So anything over that 500, you're talking something major usually. The seller has to pay for that. Now, keep in mind, the seller also has a deductible on their insurance. So if their deductible is 500, then the seller would pay the next 500, and then the insurance would pick up anything thereafter. Okay, but just keep in mind, the seller still owns it. They would be responsible over that $500 number.
Yep. Next question from Edward. What should I budget for marketing each month? I'm trying to quit my 9 to 5 job as a teacher to do this for the rest of my life and then teach my children to take over my business. Thanks in advance. Now, what I would say, Edward, is for me, this is kind of a personal choice. And I say that because it's based on really what you can afford. And, this is going to be very variable because it depends on what your current expenses are versus somebody else's, and then how much money you need to live off of if you're wanting to do this full time and stop teaching. And then, of course, that'll determine how much you need to generate on a monthly basis just to keep your basic, bills paid. So, if you're starting out part time and your living expenses are kind of taken care of from your current job that you're in, then you could obviously put more money into marketing efforts, maybe scale your business up a little bit faster. But this, I would definitely set aside some certain amount of money each month for direct mail. If you want to try then and move into things like pay-per-click advertising, then I would set up some money aside for that as well. And I could go through formulas showing you how on your first couple of properties, especially in pay-per-click, I might be willing to use up almost all of my profit, on that first deal to just reinvest in the pay-per-click, because that's a whole strategy to really get your marketing campaigns humming so that you can scale up and get those things working really well. So I really, it's a personal thing because I don't know how much money you need to live off of versus how much money you have to put in your pocket in order to quit your job. So how much, I can't tell you exactly how much, but definitely I would set aside some form of a budget for doing that. Another thing, if you're getting started and you're trying to do this and convert over, I would look at maybe getting into a coaching program, whether that's a group coaching program or a one-on-one coaching program, really help you navigate these waters so you don't run into these roadblocks and these stumbling blocks that could cause you to fail and just waste money. Me and Chris have talked about it a lot, especially when we go out and teach live. It's like, put some of your money in your education, because as you learn how to do the business, then you can just keep rinsing and repeating. So I would set some money aside for that as well, if you think that would actually help you. Next question from Jared. Have you ever wholesaled a bank property or bank owned property or a short sale?
I have not personally wholesaled those specific, but we did lease option 50 bank owned foreclosed properties one time.
I fell out my
um,
chair.
that was actually one of your deals, Bo. A lot of people don't know is that's how we met. I actually coached you.
2008.
2008.
Yeah.
and you wanted to buy some bank-owned properties, and I'm like, okay, contact your small local bank, and you did that, and then I came into town, and we went and visited the small bank, and the vice
Hmm.
president was there, and she had 50 foreclosed properties that were new construction, and
Yeah, the builder foreclosures.
these were beautiful homes.
These weren't cheap homes either. These were
No,
four or $500,000 homes. These were not,
right.
you
And
know.
normally, 99.9% of the time, a bank's never going to let you do this. But that's why I asked, because what did I have to lose? Nothing, right? So I remember asking the lady, would you lease option these properties? And I remember her looking at it. She goes, absolutely. I remember you about fell out of your chair, and it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
couldn't believe it.
I'm
Like,
walking out of there going, do you plan on moving here to help me with this whole transaction? Because I got to now figure out how to do this with 50 of them. But you know what the beauty of that whole thing was?
what?
That, when people were coming into the bank to qualify to buy a loan, and maybe
Oh yeah, it got better.
they had a snag on their credit report and they couldn't quite qualify. I mean, they were close, but they couldn't quite qualify. Well, she just sent them over to my way and said, "Well, I think Bo and Heather can help you out with this. They've got a program that I think will fit your needs." Because she knew what we were doing, and they wanted their mortgages or whatever, the loans covered at the bank. And here I am, lease option from them. I'm covering their note, and I'm working with these people to repair their credit, put them in the house because they couldn't qualify today. So it was kind of a win-win. It was just really an odd situation that kind of worked out.
Yeah, and didn't one of the other branch managers end up doing a deal with you?
I did have, yeah, actually, one of the other branch managers, she was actually in I think she was in an interest only loan, and in the next couple, 2 or 3 years, it was going to come due, and she'd already got notice that her interest rate was going to effectively double. She'd wind up doing a lease option with me. I did a lease option back out for somebody, and then that person that got a job transfer, so they couldn't buy the home. But in the middle of all that, I don't know what happened with the lady's credit. She was actually one of the branch managers. She had a credit issue, but she got that straightened out in that couple year window, and then she wound up actually taking the house back and was able to then refinance it to get rid of the interest only loan. So it kind of worked out. I kind of controlled that property for a couple of years. I made $10,000 on the down payment with my buyer. I made some positive cash flow for the couple of years, and then I turned it back over to the original seller. So that was kind of a neat little one too.
Well, and just to kind of sum that whole thing up, it is very difficult to do anything creative with the bank other than just buying it. Can it happen? Yes. Are there ways around it? Yes. It's just the majority of the time, it's going to be very difficult to do any kind of, you know, the short sale would actually be a little bit easier to work with um, than the bank owned. But just to say, it's you can do it, but it's just very
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was
rare.
normal. No, I wouldn't
No,
say that was normal.
it's tough because a lot of banks aren't going to approve it. But you can do like this whole 1 day funding and all this stuff, but it's just a pain.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Next one from Jared. Have you? Nope, I just asked that question. We're gonna move on. All right, Brad. Why do we ask if a property is listed with a realtor and when it expires? As I understand it, we can still buy a listed property. The seller would just have to account still for the realtor's commission. Is there any significance to the expiration date other than that's when the agreement ends?
So why do we ask the question? One of the most important reasons is I've talked to a lot of sellers in the days, and it was actually listed, but there was no sign in the yard. It either had blown down, it was hiding behind grass, or they were doing some pocket listing. And it was always something that I always like to clarify that up front, number one, because a lot of times the sellers will, defer you over to the realtor if you want to talk to them about the property, and you can kind of get a feel for it. But I always like to just ask them because at the end of the day, it's always much easier to deal with the owner. And I want you to think about this. If I do something creative and I explain it to the realtor, then the realtor's got to go and explain it to the owner. And who knows what they've said by that point, right? So, and obviously the realtor doesn't necessarily want to do it unless they feel that they're going to lose the listing because they want to get a commission. And a lot of the ways that we buy these properties, they wouldn't be able to get a commission up front unless I structured something small up front or something like that. So it's not to say you can't work with realtors. Of course you can. It's just I prefer not to, and I hate to say it that way, but it's just true. Because I know realtors want to get paid a certain way, and I want to, not have to do that. Any time I do something creative, it usually comes out of my pocket, not the seller's pocket, or it's going to have to be on a term where if my buyer buys in a year, then you would get your commission at that point. So there's ways of structuring that situation. But I always like to ask the question up front. It's one of the very first questions that we actually ask. Now, of course, if you already know, you already know. You wouldn't ask the question. So I think that's important. All right. So the second part.
Um, was there a second part to that? It just the seller would have to count for the realtor's commission. Is there any significance to the
Oh, yeah,
expiration
yeah,
date?
yeah. So, actually, yes, because you'll find that you're going to work with a lot of frustrated owners that have listed their property, and it's not necessarily the realtor's fault. It's just it's just timing. Sometimes it's just not working out. And keep in mind, a realtor only looks for one type of buyer. We look for multiple types of buyers, and that's kind of what makes us creative and so forth. So we can usually move the property a little bit quicker from that standpoint. And if I know that it's going to expire in 30 days, that's good. And I always like to ask the owner that because it kind of plants a seed in their head like, okay, I'll just wait till then because I don't need the realtor to show me the house and then I'm going to be obligated to pay this commission even if I don't go through the realtor after the fact. So I always like to know when that's going to expire. And there are times where, the owner will decide just to back out of the deal that they have with the listing agent, just because they need to move forward. They need to make something happen with the property. And sometimes we can just create so many different and more solutions for the owner. But I do like to just kind of plant that seed. Okay, so when would it expire, or when does it expire? Um, just kind of plant that seed, and helps me understand when I can really work this particular deal. Because if I know that I can make more money and wait 30 days, I'd rather do that and deal directly with the owner.
Good explanation. I always say sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen trying to share all the profit around. Um, Brad, when I talk to investors about seller financing, I get a lot of feedback saying it's too risky due to the amount of leverage with these low down payments. Seems like a valid argument, but I wonder if you could share your thoughts on this.
Well, yes, I do have some thoughts. Number one, not many investors actually know how to do seller financing. I think they've heard the term before. Um, but also keep in mind that seller financing is the one strategy where you would receive the highest down payment over any other strategy, period. Because if I could seller finance from you and I'm going to get the deed and the ownership, I'm going to put down more money versus if I did a lease option. Now, as far as the risk side of it, well, you're going to own it. So, yeah, there's that risk that you're personally going to own or your company's going to own it from that point of view. But as far as the down payment, that just tells me that they really just don't know what they're talking about. And because if you did a lease option, you're going to get a lower down payment than you would ever do a seller finance. We've had people give us $250,000 down because they can't go to the bank and they won't be able to go to the bank, but they have a great job. We did that one property in Houston to a doctor, and we did a 5-year term on it with $250,000 down. So you're going to make more money, and there's going to be a bigger down payment required anytime you sell or finance. Now, I'm not saying you need to put more money down with the seller to do it, but the new buyer is only going to be expected to do that.
Hmm. Next question was from Mario. He said, "How can buy this kind of properties?" Mario, I'm not sure exactly what the question was there. If you happen to be on, maybe type it in the Q&A panel, and we'll get it a little bit later this evening. Next question's from Brandon Dukes. When learning a new strategy, should you wait until all the training videos are up, or just go out and mess it up and then look at the training videos to see where you went wrong? Well, Brandon, I'm going to jump in here on this one because, early on, before I met Chris, I just went in and messed it up. but I didn't really have a training video or anything. Um, but that, that wound up costing me over $250,000. So I guess you can go whichever way you want. You can either buy your education up front, you can get a coach, you can watch the training videos. We'll see what Chris's two cents is on that, but I hate to just go mess it up completely. Now, I'd rather see you get off the couch and go do something and actually make something happen instead of being one of those people that always talk about getting into real estate and never do anything. I'd rather see you go do something other than that. But I'm not sure if intentionally going out messing up and then try to figure out from the training video where you went wrong. That's my 2 cents.
Well, as long as you're not messing up financially, right?
Yeah, I messed
So
up
I think that's
financially.
that's the big one is, yeah, you're going to learn how to maybe say it better, make a better offer, find the buyer, market it better. You're going to be able to you'll learn from your mistakes no matter what. And
Right.
obviously I went out there and just did it. It took me a good 5 years to really understand and comprehend those things. But at the same time, you can't be that person that just talks about it, because a lot of people, and too many people, they just talk about it. And the more they learn, the more they realize they don't know anything about the business. So what do? They keep learning. And I get it. We're always going to keep learning, but at some point you're going to have to pull the trigger, because you have to take action. And that's why I call those the executable steps, is because you have to execute them instead of just talking about them. So I lean both ways, that you have to get out there. But at the same time, yeah, we want to prep you and try to prepare you as best we can, especially from an REI Pro standpoint. Obviously, having a coach, you could quickly get the answer immediately every time you run into these things. But everyone's going to run into something. I
Oh,
mean, it's just part of the process.
well, let me give them a tip too, because you're talking about learning a new strategy, where the lease options, and I know all of our students have said the same thing about, well, do I say this to the seller, or do I let them know that I'm going to be the one, I'm not living in the house? And it's about the conversation and building a relationship with the seller. So, even early on, my wife, she had no clue how to carry on these conversations with a seller. So one of the things I did to her, I said, hey, you know what? Let's just call the county next door. Let's just go through, some for sale by owner leads, and let's just act like we're really interested in buying that property. And let's go through the questions and the answers. And what we found out, what she found out was every seller, a lot of times, are asking the same questions. And the more that she called, she was prepared to answer those questions. So I think it's repetition and just getting off the couch, like you're saying, and go do it. You're going to mess up some of the questions and the answer. You're going to stumble on yourself. You're going to get nervous. But the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So yeah, financially, don't do some of the things that you could do to hurt you financially. But getting off the couch and going out and fumbling through it, you'll get better as you do it. So yeah, definitely both ways. Okay, another one from Brandon. When you're trying to structure a lease option with a realtor involved, what are some of the challenges to be aware of?
Well, I think the very first challenge is the fact, does the realtor even understand what you're doing? That's going to be the biggest challenge, because I always say to people that if the realtor actually knew and understood this particular strategy, they'd be doing it. And so that's going to be your first challenges. And then the second part is just really figuring out how they're going to get paid, right? So is the seller going to pay the commission when your new buyer ends up buying down the road? Do you take part of the down payment money to pay the realtor? How does that get structured? And every deal is going to be a little bit different, but those are going to be some. But the biggest challenge to me is, do they even understand what you're doing? Because if they don't understand what you're doing or understand the strategy, then they're less likely to convince the seller that they need to do it.
Mhm.
And then it's an uphill battle from there.
Okay, now we have a rather lengthy question coming in from Keith. It looks like it's in about 3 parts. So we're just going to break this down. So Keith is saying, number one, if you're structuring a wraparound mortgage and the seller is required to make the payment on the first, how do you make sure that the seller does not go into default? Then number two is using an LLC for buying real estate with seller financing and lease options the best choice? And then number three is regarding the earnest money deposit in wholesaling. Do you simply include that as a cost when you determine your assignment fee with the buyer? Thanks.
Yeah. So the first question is, what happens? How do you know, have that safety net of the seller missing the payment, the property goes in default? Well, the very first thing is I never allow the seller to make the payments on a seller finance. Number one. But what could you do? You could set up an escrow account and have that paid through there. You could have the seller give you verification that the payment was made each month. But I never set it up that way. I always set it up to where I'm going to make the payment. So that would be number one. Number two is having an LLC for seller financing. The lease option is the best overall. Yes, it's going to be the best in most cases. Um, we have LLCs for ours, so LLC is going to be one of those better choices. But again, getting with your accountant and so forth, they'll be able to help you fine tune that. And then the last part, which is actually a really good question, because I don't know if a lot of people understand this part. So basically, regarding the earnest money deposit in wholesaling, do you simply include that as a cost when you determine your assignment fee with the buyer? So if you have to give the seller $500 down on the contract, how does that work with the new buyer? So I want 3,000 plus I need to make up the additional 500 deposit. Well, here's the good thing. And I want to try to keep this as simple as I can. When you sign a contract with the seller, when you're wholesaling, okay, and let's just use an example that they wanted $500 security deposit down, okay, or earnest money deposit. When I get my new buyer, the new buyer, I'm going to assign that contract. When I assign the contract, they're agreeing to everything already in the contract, which also includes the $500 earnest money. Okay, so I know that if I want 3 grand, I'm going to the investor saying, I want 3 grand for what I've already promised the owner. Do you agree? So you don't have to actually think about it anymore. You don't have to think, oh, do I need to add that to my profit? No, they're already taking that responsibility over. So if technically I put 500 down and then I sell that contract to a new buyer, they technically have to get 500 down. And then at closing, I would be reimbursed the 500 that I put down. And I hope that made sense.
Made sense to me.
Well, that
Okay.
don't mean nothing.
No. Okay. Next question from Brad. When pursuing a lease option with a seller and the property needs repairs, how do you determine the level of repairs that would be, quote, too much for a lease option to make sense? And you would need to look at other acquisition strategies. And as a related question, when you find a lease option buyer and they want to make improvements during the term of the lease, how do you address that? Thanks. Well, first I would say, because I've done a number of these lease options, generally I'm looking for houses that are definitely what I would call livable. So if the repairs are too many to even be livable, like you have to do major repairs, and I would say we'd probably be looking at a different type of strategy. But you also need to remember that our first profit center is going to be the difference in that down payment. So if you want to do something small, some small stuff like carpet cleaning, maybe a little touch up paint, if that's what you think, then in my opinion, that's fine. But just remember you're paying for that and it's coming out of your first, profit center. So just keep that in mind when you're doing lease options. And with lease option buyers, here's the tricky part typically because, they can't go to the bank today and qualify for the loan. So they're not really, generally not real picky. They're wanting to buy, and really you're the only one helping them out. And, as far as you're related, you don't have to do too much. In other words, make this pristine like it's some rehab model project. They're going to be fine. And a lot of those people are going to come in and want to improve the property anyway. So I look for it to be livable, do maybe some small things. Now, as far as your related question goes, I've had lease option buyers improve my properties, and I always tell them, that if there's going to be any changes to the home, they need to obtain my written permission for that because I want to know what they're doing. I don't want them doing something outlandish that's going to devalue the property. So they can't make any changes. If they want to paint a wall color, typically I'm fine, but I make them give that to me in written permission to do that. So that's
Yeah,
kind of
and
how I
just
handle that.
just to add to that, Bo,
Hmm.
That is all explained in the actual contract, and and again, it's also very negotiable too. So, but we do have an entire paragraph designed just for that particular question in the lease option agreement already.
Yep.
So that would be a great. If you just scroll down just a little bit, Bo, on the software, till you see the lease option. So you guys see the education center down here at the bottom left here. So this episode number 5, this is exactly what we're talking about, is the actual contract for a lease option with the seller. Now, keep in mind, I haven't done the buyer yet. That's going to be in the next episode, but just keep in mind, this is a great learning tool for you guys to go through and understand this particular agreement, especially if you're doing lease options. Obviously, you need the agreement, number one, which you can get in your contract section, but watch me go through this because I do share some tips. It's approximately about 40 some minutes long. So definitely check that out.
Okay, next question from Shelly. I need some help and I do not have access to Facebook anymore. They keep banning me, but I have absolutely no idea why. So I'm trying to figure out now how I can get some help. I have a seller that has 3 properties he's trying to get rid of, and I wanted to do an all inclusive offer. They're not good lease options, but they're good wholesale properties to maybe fix and flip. How can I get some help with this as I'm not quite sure where to start or even how to proceed?
Yeah. So the first thing, it's a big question, number one. But just type in a property here in REI Pro. So, Bo, if you go to any property here, and this is the whole reason why I designed this whole executable step system, is because most people have no idea what to do next. They'll be like, hey, I found the deal, but now what? And if you literally follow these 10 steps right here, it's going to help walk you through the process, no matter if you're wholesaling, if you're retailing, if you're seller financing, if you're lease options, what types of deals you're working, if it's pre foreclosure, a short sale, a bank owned. You need to follow these 10 executable steps because these are going to be the foundation. So once you get through step 1, okay, found the deal, checked out well, now I need to go to step 2. Well, what does that mean? Well, I need to contact the owner. So go to the phone scripts. If you don't have the number, you can obviously skip trace that as and do that premium search. I need to go through this list of questions. If they're open to selling the property, I move to step 3. And then I move to step 4. I'm literally walking through these executable steps. And if people, this is the very first thing we put in the system, because I realized that it doesn't matter how many cool things you have in the software if you don't have a clue what's going on. You don't even know why it's even there to begin with, right? So these 10 steps right here are going to help everybody, not just Shelly, but everybody get through that process. And then when you get obviously more experienced, you know the process, right? You don't have to think about the process. But for most people, if you've done less than 10 deals, you need to go through these steps. And that's going to help walk you through. I always say you just need to get through that one deal, because you get through one deal, you can go through 2. So it's always trying to get that first one. I think that's always seems to be the hardest deal. It definitely was pretty difficult for me. It took me 3 months, and I was working it full time to get my first deal. So, and then it started to get a little bit easier. I call it the snowball effect, and it just seemed like it snowballed the more that I did it, and more that I got out there, more that I followed these steps that I created. So,
Hmm. Next question from Hugo. My question is, how can I help a cash heavy person who can't qualify for a mortgage get into a home? I'm encountering many people who can afford the mortgage but cannot qualify for it due to their quote on paper income. Well, I would say that seller financing is the way to go. I had a situation on one of my houses very similar to this where the person generated lots of, let's just say, cash. The problem is they didn't take the cash and deposit it all into the bank. So when I'm working with, a mortgage broker, debt to income, those type of things, they can't qualify. So they're heavy on cash. They can definitely afford the mortgage payment. They just can't qualify for the loan. So, perfect setup for the seller finance situation. They're paying me. They make plenty of money. I'm getting a great return on it. by going through seller finance. So that would be the way I would handle people like that, is go through the seller finance. Next question from David. What if the seller stops making payments on their mortgage and defaults? I know I have the deed, but guess this would create some serious issues.
Yes. And again, we'll go back to this is why I make the payments, number one. So I think that's going to be the most important lesson to learn here is anytime you sell or finance it from the owner, regardless if they have a mortgage, you make the payments on there. If the property did default, yes, that would create some legal issues. It has never happened to me because I don't allow the seller to do that, but it would create some legal issues. There would be a battle. Um, in I highly doubt. Again, it hasn't happened to me, so I'm just based on experience here, just trying to give you the best answer. If it did, okay, is I highly doubt the bank would actually foreclose if you started making the payments, even if you told the bank. In worst case scenario, I would go refinance it and get it out of their name. So if because I already have the deed, so I could just refinance it and everybody would be happy. But um, that is the one lesson: don't let the seller make those payments.
Yeah, you don't want them going into default, and then you're a year or two down the road, and you've lost everything that you were working for. So, okay, so Brad, another question from Brad. I think Brad's getting a little mini coaching session tonight, Chris. So Brad says, when you are buying a lease option from a seller, do you have the property inspected by a professional inspector? And on the sale side, do tenant buyers normally want to have the property professionally inspected before signing the lease option agreement? Now, I don't typically have a professional inspector come in on the sell side. Now, I go through checklist, and that's also included in the lease option agreement, by the way, in REI Pro. This checklist. I don't typically do that. I know what I'm looking for and all that stuff. Now, I've personally never had a lease option buyer want to have the home professionally inspected on the front end. I have, once they've exercised the right to purchase, I've had somebody actually do an inspection, but of course that's at their cost. And I was actually in one of my current lease options. I was getting ready to sell it before this whole COVID-19 thing to the tenant that's in there, and that actually came up about, does she want to have an inspection? And she said, I've been in this property for 7 years. This is kind of a weird one here, but it's a long-term lease option I keep renewing for her. And she said, I know every little quirk about this house. I'm not going to spend the money to have an inspection done. I don't care. It's great. I love the house. I'm ready to buy. So in that case, she's not going to have an inspection done when she exercises the right to purchase from me. So I generally don't when I'm going through with the seller, and I've had it happen both ways on the back end where yes, one time they did, and then sometimes they don't. I don't know if you've had it any different ways, Chris, on that.
No, I thought
So,
that was good.
uh, question from Montreal. Question number one: how should I start finding lease option leads? Should I just call for rent ads or send postcards to vacant property owners? And question number two: what is the best way to find a mortgage broker that will work with my tenant buyers? Should I just contact random brokers for this and just ask them if they will work with my tenant buyers to get financing? Thanks. Well, for question number one there, yeah, I would say direct mail to absentee owners, vacants. You could also look for, in your local area, whether it's newspapers or online, any homes that are for rent. Because if they're willing to accept monthly payments on a rent, it's a good chance they might want to do a lease option with you. So I would definitely look into those. So all those are good. Direct mail, absentee owner, vacant, homes for rent. But as far as looking for um, a mortgage broker that can kind of help you walk through this. I use a mortgage broker when I do lease options. I want to see where their credit score is. We're going to be able to get them qualified within a year or two. And I've kind of built that relationship up and I have my go-to guy. But so for you, if you know some in your area, sure, you can go talk to them. But I would also go to the local RIAs there in your area because there will be mortgage brokers there. And if they're in a RIA meeting, they're already in a like-minded investment, typically mindset, and they're going to know what you're doing, and they're going to offer these kind of services. I know my mortgage broker can paint a path for somebody. He knows he's not getting paid today if their credit's a little dinged up, so he wants to tell them exactly what they need to do in order to get the loan written. And we're going to spend the next 12 months making sure all of that happens. And if we're helping all these homeowners out fix everything, they're just going to go right back to that mortgage broker, and that's who they're going to get the loan from. So he understands it's kind of like sales. We all try to fill our sales funnel so we have them dripping out the bottom and have a constant sales coming out. And so that's what he does for me. He works on me on the front end because not only am I feeding him those types of buyers, I'm also sending him qualified buyers as well. So go to your local RIA. That'd be a good option for you. And I believe this looks like one of the last questions here from Alfred. I operate or invest in Southeast Michigan, Detroit, and the surrounding areas. I use a title company for my transactions. Is it best to stay exclusively with one, or should I have a few to do business with?
Yeah, I always like to, I never put all my eggs in one basket. So I do like to work with multiple, two or three. Of course, my attorney is going to be the one of those. Just simple fact that he understands most of the creative financing side of what I do. So if you haven't found a good real estate attorney, well, let me first say you don't really need to find one until you get a deal, right? So, and that'll force you to go get one. It's not that you have to get it ahead of time, but I do like to have multiple um, places that I can close the deal.
All right. So let's see. We still got some time. Do we want to jump in and do some live ones?
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right. Let's do it. All right. So the first one's coming in from Brad. I purchased the lease option contract, and under the quote conditions of this lease option agreement section, the first bullet point is subject to review, inspection, and written approval by my financial partner. That's what we showed y'all a little earlier. He said, I understand that this is my escape clause. However, I don't understand when it expires. Does this mean halfway through the term I can walk away? That is how a potential seller is viewing it, and he wants it removed. I'm curious how to handle the objection to that particular clause.
You would be allowed to get out of that until the expiration of the contract. So you would be correct on that one. Um, not putting it in there, obviously, that's going to be dependent on you. Um, Generally, when I go into a lease option deal and, here's what I promised the owner, I stick with it. That's my word. And if something goes wrong, then I need to fix it. So I don't necessarily use that clause per se. It's more of doing it before you got the buyer. So that's where you would really want to use it, especially with wholesaling, mostly with that strategy. So it's really up to you. If it's going to ruin the deal and it's a good deal, just get rid of it. Or you could say, hey, I'm only going to put this until the commencement date, but then it'd be like, what? The seller may not appreciate that. So, but that's what I would do. If it's going to kill the deal, just get rid of it.
Okay, next question from Matt. When filling out the affidavit, is the exhibit a copy of your agreement?
That is correct. And I rarely ever file that, by the way.
But
So, but yes, it would be a copy of that agreement. But I don't like filing it in case somebody really understands how to look up the records. They would see how much I had the property under contract for. So I've been very lucky to just, hey, sign this in front of the notary and then filed it. And all right, good to go. And then I never actually attach it. Now, if you want to see the copy, then I absolutely put my contact information there. So, anyways.
all right. All right, next question from Jim. Any new thoughts on being able to bulk import properties into a marketing campaign by using the APN? Jim, I am actually looking into that for you. I know we kind of bounced back and forth. You gave me a test file. I did match up some of those APNs from the file that you had. I guess you got it from your realtor. It was some expired listings, but there's some stuff that wasn't just matching up. I know what you're looking for, and I am looking into adding that to the bulk import into the direct mail section for you. Okay, from Susan. I found a vacant property. I used REI Pro to locate the owner. Short story. The owner passed. The wife is still living. She filed bankruptcy and said that she lost the home. Tax ease has the property, and I believe it is about ready to go to auction. They're telling me that she still owns the property. She said that she doesn't think so. I got total owed on I got the total owed on the property from taxis, but it's different than what REI Pro shows. I've done a probate lien abatement before, but never a probate slash tax lien. Any advice on finding out if there's any other liens, etc.? How complicated is the process to purchase? Pros and cons.
Well, you could do a basic title search to see if there's any additional issues with the property. So you could call this where having part of that power team as we talk about a title company, an attorney that can do these things. But I would do not a full blown out title search, but see if they could get a basic title search. What other problems are
What
there?
other liens are on there?
So that would be my first step. But without getting into too much detail, it sounds like something, not sure if it's worth the time or the money, but it sounds like maybe one of those deals that an attorney would need to get involved. But again, don't have all the details in front of me, but it sounds like that may be the direction I'd be heading into to do that research for you. The downside is going to cost money to do it. So that's always the kicker to it. So it's always weighing, time and money versus the deal. One of my students was working a pre-foreclosure deal that had multiple family members, and one of them did pass on as well. And we waited 6 months. We got an attorney to work the deal, and he made $250,000 on one deal. That was well worth the time and investigation and a little bit of money up front. So I think you got to weigh the deal for the potential profits. That would be my first thing.
I'm going to read this one because maybe I might need some clarification, Chris, unless you understand it. It says, hi guys, it's from Michelle. Hi guys, I was wondering, in there is a direct response or contact in regards to contracts or calls, or just a simple quick response to a situation, something similar to Instagram?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Michelle, if you could try to clarify that one, that would be appreciated. Daniel. Hey guys, great product. What trends are you guys noticing in real estate? What do you predict will happen in the future?
Ooh. Yeah, but what happens if I give you the wrong prediction?
Well, exactly. Just talking to my mortgage broker here locally, I'm buying a property right now in Florida. I'm talking to the realtors down there, and they're like, we're all real strong. I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to get an appraiser, do some stuff, and they're like, man, they're backed up 7 to 10 days because they're just extremely busy. So it's hard to say predicting because everybody seems to be really busy. I'll tell you something that I thought is kind of related because it does deal with homes, but I got a friend that does window replacements, and you would think with job loss, all this stuff with COVID, and he said, I am the busiest I have ever been. He said, I don't know what in the world's going on. I can't even keep up. And then I got another friend that's a fence company, and they're like, we're 10 to 12 weeks out just to try to install somebody's fence. But I know companies just like us, they're already booking installations into next year. So just talking about trends in real estate in general, I mean, these are people who are working in real estate in a roundabout way, and they're the busiest they've ever been. So I don't know if that predicts anything as to what's currently going on, but they're all busy.
Yeah, I think in general you're going to see the pre-foreclosures eventually that have been kind of postponed.
Yeah.
They're going to come more active. Obviously, you're going to find a lot more motivated sellers now. I think that's going to be the trend for the next year or so, and that's why I would say people would be crazy if they're not in this business. And I know we kind of say that all year long, but this is in your face. Like it won't get any better because you can see it. I would obviously be learning, and that's why I did the lease option series for you guys, is because I really do like the creative financing side to it. All the strategies are going to be still great, but the creative financing to me is going to be one of the bigger subjects, and I think that's why a lot of people are. You're probably find more people talking about that too. So, but pre foreclosures, I think in general, Bo is correct. There are a lot of people moving from the north to the south right now, from South
Hmm.
Carolina down. So, even my contractor, I mean, I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. They're busy. People are literally coming down buying vacant lots. I mean, it's kind of crazy down when you move south. We're in Florida, so you're gonna see all kinds of things like that coming up. But as far as like major kind of prediction, what would be the best thing? It's outside of the creative financing and lease or the pre foreclosures, everything else is just going to be fine too. I was always the person that said, "Hey, I'm going to go to the seller. I'm going to hear their situation, then I'm going to tell you what I can do. I might wholesale it, I might buy it, I might lease option it, or I could sell or finance." So always try to take every situation. It's just you're going to find more of those motivating situations um, moving forward, and this is going to last for a while. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's a great time. They always say, you get into real estate when it's down. Unfortunately, most people they don't get into real estate till it's like in the news and it's all hot and all that great stuff. So
Sorry, I had some people chatting in too. I'm answering everybody all over the place here. Okay. Michelle, would it be best to lease option or seller finance a condo with a mortgage and without?
sure. I mean, to me, it's irrelevant if the numbers work, if it has one or not. As far as a condo, depending on where the condo is. But at the same time, people live in condos. People live in mobile homes. They live in any kind of real estate. So when you look at the strategy, use that strategy for any kind of real estate. And that's kind of the cool thing with a lease option. You could lease option land, you could lease option a condo, a mobile home, an apartment complex, a retail, your business office. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do with that one strategy. So, but condos are fine. Obviously, everything comes down to numbers. They say fall in love with the numbers first. And if that works and you can make it a deal, then it's a deal.
Brandon, have you lease optioned a pre foreclosure property?
Never. Nope.
Yep. Angel, my name is Angel. I'm 18 years old. I want to start learning how to advertise properties. I find it really fun. Do you know where I can start? Well, as far as advertising, are you talking about advertising for properties to buy or advertising properties to sell? I guess we all have advertising the same platforms, from uh, Craigslist, we've got Facebook, we've got everybody markets the same places. So Zillow, I'm not sure if you're which way you're talking about there.
Well, as far as deals, I'd be doing direct mail, period.
Direct mail, yeah.
Period. I mean, that's exactly what I'd be doing. If it's your
um,
business, then that's another thing. But I'd focus more on getting the deal than building a business. If you get the deal, that will build the business.
yep.
And I started when I was 23 is when I started.
Yeah, so
So
kudos for being
congrats.
18. We
I
did
know.
have
Congrats.
we did have one time the youngest person in a teaching a live event. He was 14 years old.
Yes.
Michelle, I'm getting stuck with talking to a seller when they want cash. What are some of the insights you might have?
Always lead with cash. Always. No matter if I want to do a lease option or not. That took me years to figure that out. Every time I tried to intro the lease option from the beginning, it always seemed like it backfired on me. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about do you know how you want to buy the property? You could wholesale it, you could buy it, you could lease option. So you have so many different, weapons and these strategies that always and from a seller's point of view, usually if they want to sell something, they just want to be done with it. So I would always go in with the cash and then I transition into now once I start building that relationship with the owner, I'll say, now let me ask, would you consider taking payments on it or doing a lease option on the property? And even if they tell me no, depending on what their situation is, like if I know they have to move, I know that, it's they're not going to sit on it and just wait for that perfect number. If I know they're going to move, I'm still going to make the other offers. I couldn't tell you how many times the seller would finally they would say no, 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 and then look at it on paper and they go, I think we'd take that one. That one looks better. So
Okay, coming from Danny, I work with foreclosed homeowners and I create lists on REI Pro. I have found the REI date of foreclosures are late or later than what Zillow or Redfin shows on their site. So Danny, I'm not sure exactly, obviously I have to research a specific property for you. I do know that we are fed foreclosure data Monday through Friday every day when these things come in. If we have a more recent date than maybe what you see on Zillow, maybe we have more current information that's coming in. Not real sure if that's what you're asking, but this is what we're being fed in, and we have boots on the ground that are pulling these right off some counties. Some of them were fed electronic, and some of them we literally have people typing these in. So I would say, we have some really accurate. We have one of the best places for foreclosures
you could
because
ask, yeah, any of the data companies, there's
the
only a handful out there to begin with. They will tell you this one is the best.
Yep.
The other companies will actually say that, and
And
that's who we use. So
I think maybe he was following this up. He was saying, "So I'm always reaching the homeowner too late." So I'd have to see what he's really meaning by that about the date. Um, Michelle says, "I have spoken to a lawyer in Florida who stated that I would need to be on a board of realtors. However, I'm not a realtor, just trying to use these strategies of lease options. What are your thoughts?"
find another attorney.
Yeah.
That's my first thought. Um, you're going to hear that from. I always say attorney was one of those that was kind of difficult to find. The best place to find a good attorney is to talk to your local RIA group. Okay, that's going to be they're going to know who to use and who not to use. Not many attorneys actually understand the creative financing side of real estate because it's not normal. Okay, so get with your local RIA, attend a meeting. That's who I would get those resources from.
Okay, Alfred, how do you run comps on a house that the owner says is going to be a tear down? And how would I get an ARV and make an offer? I found this house of a probate list, if that makes a difference.
Well, it really depends on what you're building. Are you building? Number one, you still got to take the comps that are in the nearby area, but then you're going to have to add two more. The cost side of it is where you're really following into is the tear down, the rebuild, the cost of the build, and so forth. But what are you building? Are you building something similar? Or are you building something that's going to be more valuable than what's currently in the neighborhood? So um, that's what you have to look at is what are you actually building to get a good ARV, and it's not going to be 100%, but you still got to take the comps that are surrounding the property as well.
Michelle wants to know, is it a good idea to send a seller multiple offers if they are hesitant but still wants to see an offer?
Absolutely, all
Yeah,
the time,
always.
all the time.
Okay, this looks like a long one. It is coming from Amita. It's a two-part question.
We'll do the first part. We'll answer the first part.
Okay. I just locked up a property plus the lot next to it in a hot area in Atlanta, Georgia. I ran comps through REI Pro based on comparables. The ARV calculated by REI Pro was 425,000 based on the comps that I chose, which she chose 4. I locked the property up for less than half of that at 140,000. The repair cost is about 60 to 65,000. Pushed it out to a cash buyer based on Deal Pro's suggestion for 180,000. So I guess now this is where she's getting the question. The cash buyer viewed the property and said that they could only do 150. So I went back to the seller, which is motivated, and negotiated down to 130 and called this buyer back and said that we would accept 153. Now he's saying that we can't do 150 or 153. It needs to be lower. I feel like sometimes buyers right now are trying to lowball even more because the market is turning in their favor. So my question is, am I truly asking too much for the property that has a value of 425 in perfect condition? That's part one.
Well, based on the basic numbers that you just gave me, that's a home run deal, actually. And if you have the investor still trying to knock you down, go find another buyer.
Yeah.
I always say sometimes, I hate to say it this way, but you got to put your foot down at some point. You just can't let people, you control the situation, not him or her. I don't know who the buyer is, but you have to control it. Don't let these people beat you up. And I remember people did that to me all the time when I first got started because they could tell I didn't really know what in the world I was doing. But I mean, based on the basic numbers, even if the repairs are even higher than that, I mean, there's still a lot of profit to be made, even with the additional cost, even if they didn't do anything with the vacant lot. So I would find another buyer and just tell, look, if it's 153 or whatever you're willing to accept on the deal, 153 or whatever they last said, take it or leave it. Otherwise, I've got 10 other buyers that want to buy it.
Yeah, and
So you
you
just got
probably
to
go
put your
to
foot down.
with those kind of numbers, you probably could go to one of the local RIA chapters there. They let you a lot of times pitch a deal if you have something. Because I mean, if you have cash, then you might would want to get on this, fix, flip it, do whatever you're going to do because there's a lot of profit there to be made. Or if you just need to wholesale it, then you probably can find somebody that's would want to do this deal, or even possibly a hard money lender that might want to do this deal for you because the numbers look pretty good. Her second part of that question was that she just looking for the wrong type of cash buyer because they only viewed it, the one that viewed it kept saying that the ARV was off, and I kept saying, well, the ARV is different than the sell amount.
I
So,
mean, it goes back to you need to find a new buyer
yeah,
because it does sound like a hot lead in hot Atlanta.
and
Isn't
hot
all
land.
properties hot there? I mean, the humidity really sucks there, by the way.
Ooh, man, you
So
should have been up here this week. Lord have mercy, it was hot. I can't even tell you how hot it was here. Okay, Igor, how do you go about actually enforcing using the escape clause if you don't actually have a financial partner? Do you get something in writing? Can you use your lawyer? Can you be anyone like a family member? I assume you have to provide something to the seller or have a backup if you get sued.
oh, you can't get sued, number one. So that's first thing. I think that's a thing that if seller doesn't sell to you, that's breach of contract. If the buyer doesn't buy from the seller, you're going to lose the earnest money, but they can't sue you. So your cat could be your financial partner at the end of the day. It really doesn't matter who it is because you're not disclosing it. But if you are running into issues with people saying that, then make sure the numbers are right. I think I wouldn't say every deal I've done I've had it right. So I think it's just from a teaching point of view, you really need to have something like that in there just in case you did something wrong. Because a lot of people they always make the wrong offer and then they wonder why they can't get a buyer for it. So I think making the correct offer is the most important. But um, you don't have to disclose who that is. It could be anybody. It could be your spouse. It could be a friend. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
And follow-up question looks like from Amita. Another question, why do these buyers keep saying that the ARV is off, but it's the ARV that my REI Pro calculates for me based on comps in the area? This includes MLS and all cash buys. It's very
Just print the comp
frustrating.
report out.
Yeah, I've done that. I print the comp report and even challenged an appraiser, by the way. She says it's very frustrating because it seems like I'm incompetent, but I'm sure the ARV is not wrong. Are they just trying to lowball me? Or is this an ARV deal pro not as accurate as it should be? All clarification is greatly appreciated. Well, I can tell you as far as the numbers that you have coming in, the comp section, these are actually recorded sales that were recorded and time stamped, at the recorder's office, as well as these are what's coming in on the MLS feed. And then eventually what comes in on the MLS feed, we get it quicker, but it's going to come in through the recorder's office. So these are actual recorded sales. So those numbers are not going to be wrong as far as what's in there.
Yeah,
Um,
assuming that you've chosen the right
that's what I was going to
comps.
say.
Yes.
Assuming you've chosen the right ones, the numbers themselves are accurate, but you got to make sure you're picking the right ones that are comparable to the subject property, or could be off a little bit in that regard.
Yep.
Michelle, is there a link to a direct or live support for questions towards contracts or seller questions, just as y'all have tech support? Literally.
As far as educational stuff, our team is not equipped to give anybody advice. It's more of a number one, the team is not trained in real estate from a customer service side. That's why we do these live Q and A's to give you guys the opportunity to ask those, real estate questions. Outside of that, it's going to be coaching, and that's where people. We answer a lot of really good pieces out there, Bo, and even from like a YouTube channel or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I really can't legally give you advice because you're going to go out there and did you do what I said? Did you, do half of what I said? Then you did something wrong. And then, I don't want somebody coming after me as far as that's where coaching comes into. So now we have that agreement laid out to where I can actually give you the advice. It's more of a liability thing. We don't want people being steered in the wrong direction. So you really need to ask the real estate experts in these types of questions. And that's why we do these live Q&As.
Jim Shoemaker, any advice that you can give on trying to develop a power team in a remote state without traveling to that state in order to possibly start investing in out of state properties? Asking because, as you are probably aware, I live in a high value market with a lot of competition from other investors, and going out of state may be easier way to get moving at a much smaller entry point financially.
Yes, I've got a simple answer for you, Jim. Join the local Facebook groups in the community of wherever you're looking to invest. That's how I found this house that we did the seller finance on. And I always say putting feelers out there. Hey, you're looking to invest, looking for an attorney, looking for a realtor, looking for whoever you're looking for. But join some of those local Facebook groups, and that literally will give you tons of people. We actually, when we put some feelers out looking for this property, we had so many people email us or their own houses that weren't even listed for sale. So we just literally said, here's what we're looking for. Does anybody know anything? And next thing you know, I mean, we had like 30 responses. So that's where I would go.
All right, let's see. Danny, hi, this is Danny. Can I exclude private loan properties when I search properties in REI Pro? Can I see if the seller has second loans? On the part about can you see if they have second loans? Yes, we hold up to 3 loans actually. And that's part of what goes into the potential equity. We look at what is it currently worth, what did they take out on their primary loan, and if they have a second or third loan. We use all that information. Now, can I exclude private loan properties when I search through REI Pro? I don't think we have a filter for that as far as private loans. Sometimes we do get loan information from counties that would say it is a private loan versus if it's a bank, but I don't think we have a filter that excludes that loan out.
How many more we got?
3.
Because I wanted to give everybody that's on here a little free gift. It's a small gift, but it made a huge difference for me when I got started and things that I've learned. So as soon as we wrap up these last 3, I want to share with you how to get that gift.
All right. Well, I think these 2 of them look like they're pretty fast. I think Amitas just has a side note still on that other property. The 425 ARV I adjusted again and only chose 1 comp that sold this month on June the 5th. The ARV is still pretty high, 330,000. The only difference is the property is over 2,000 square feet and all the other properties are 1,700 or less. So again, it frustrates me when I'm being told my ARV is off, but the deal pro says that I'm correct. Mind you, this contract is for the property plus the lot next door. Again, I think it probably goes back to finding another buyer instead of just
don't let people push you around. I think that's especially when you're getting started, and it almost feels people will do that to you. There's some really mean people out there, and investors specifically, they just want to get the best deal they can, and they're going to keep working the system. And if they figured that, oh, she went back to the seller and they got a lower deal, I wonder how much lower we could go. at some point you're just going to have to put your foot down and say, I'm moving on. Somebody else is going to buy that house because if the numbers already sound good.
Yeah, and Michelle's just making a comment here. Says I think she wants to know. Let's have a role play example of options two and something in a seller finance. I guess that'd be kind of interesting to do a little role play seller. How do you answer questions if they throw stuff at you? We'll think about doing something fun like that, Michelle, at some point.
Hold on, let me write that down.
Yeah, 'cause, that's have a little role play.
We used to do that. I'm sure. I don't know if Jim saw me do that live, but we actually used to do live phone calls at our events where literally like we'd have 70 people sitting around a table and every people would bring in the leads and then I would call them. I have no idea what I'm calling on, but they got to hear how to do a conversation, which obviously you can't record. It's against the law, but to play back for you guys. I did have one of my students do have a video on a seller finance call that I need to do the other part to, but that would definitely be some role playing is what I wrote down.
Yeah,
Maybe
do
we
some role
do
play.
like a role play sessions. We maybe do that would be actually fun, actually, and people will get tremendous value out of something like that because you learn how to think quickly and you
Hmm.
learn how to say it on the fly. And I think the more that you practice the foundation of the strategy, and so where you find yourself that you can answer things fairly quickly and transition just by following these simple steps that we have in the
Yeah,
system.
Jim's commenting on the chat saying he remembers some of those live calls.
Ooh,
He
man,
also
those
says
were those were fun.
he also says you need to tell the crack house story one day. Well, so
Oh, you
let's
mean
see.
you mean your deal?
My deal.
No, not your deal, Jim's deal.
Oh, Jim's, yeah, he said yes, the crack house story.
Well, how about we do this? Jim could actually, why don't we talk about that deal? We could do a presentation. Jim, if you still got all those pictures and stuff, that would be it's an interesting deal, say the least. But I will tell everyone that's still on this call that one of my students has agreed to do basically a presentation with me. I haven't scheduled it yet, but it's coming very soon where he's one of my coaching students where we actually did a creative finance on a property that we turned into an Airbnb, and he cash flows over 10,000 a month, and that's cash flow. So we took this awesome strategy, seller financing, bought a house a block from the beach, and they turned it into an Airbnb. I want to do a presentation with him, and I want to kind of tell everyone, how did we do it, the before and after pictures of the property, all that stuff. It'd be very valuable because obviously, as you know, vacation properties are, obviously in the last couple months have been um, a big thing, but as they're coming back now, using any of these creative financing strategies to do these Airbnbs, let me tell you, that is going to be a good home run for you guys. And I want to go through this presentation with them because we actually did the deal back in January. Um, so this year, and just kind of teach you, how do we structure the deal? What did the rehab? It's only a 2-bedroom property too. Um, so you think of these condos. I know that was kind of brought up. Turning these creative. You could go lease option a place, turn it into an Airbnb, and if that's
Hmm.
all you did, I mean, that's great because I even went through an example of this in the lease option episode. I think it was, what was it, 3 or 4? I can't remember which episode it was. But if you go back and watch the training series, will actually show you how much more profitable it would be to actually use it as a vacation rental than if I were to turn around and just put a new buyer in it. So just taking the cash flow out of the property, and it's a very profitable way to do business. Obviously, the whole Airbnb thing is really big right now, and I think all of them came back, didn't they, Bo? They're now allowing all of
Yeah,
them.
they're all allowing those down there now.
So, anyways, we're going to do that presentation here in the near future as well. We'll let everybody know about that.
but even Jim, he said, yeah, he has all the pictures and he'd be happy to share it if we probably make him a co-host and do that as a kind of a story.
Yeah, we'll get with you, Jim, and we'll go ahead and get that scheduled in. Maybe we'll do it in replace of one of the live Q and A's. Give people an opportunity to really go through a real deal and the ups, the downs, the things you didn't see coming, all that good stuff. And you're going to learn a lot. So we'll get with you, Jim, on that.